All right, the time is 11:05. We're going to call this meeting back to order. As I stated right before the break, we are going to go out of agenda. So we are actually going to move to, skipping item F. We'll come back to item F. We're going to move to item G, Public Affairs. Before I pass this meeting to Public Affairs Committee Chair Diana Love, I'd like to acknowledge Ms. Love for visiting the CSLB Enforcement Investigation Center in Fresno on Tuesday. As usual, staff was thrilled to have you visit, and appreciate you taking the time with that. I turn it over to Public Affairs Committee Chair Diana Love.
Thank you and good morning. And it's always a pleasure to break up my 6-hour drive from Palmdale to stop at Fresno and to greet the staff. They're very pleasant and always happy to see me. I will continue to do that. If there were more offices on my trip, I would stop by and say hello to all of them. So with that, thank you, Chair Mark. As Chair of the Public Affairs Committee, I will provide more information about Public Affairs' final 2025-27 strategic plan objectives and the plan for each objective. These can be found on page 201 of the board packet. The first objective is improve the clarity and tone of board communications to increase understanding. While this is an ongoing effort by the Public Affairs Office, this has a target date of the third quarter of 2025, where staff will review publications, news releases, industry bulletins, and the website to ensure that the text is clear. One of the ways staff will be reviewing documents is through the Hemingway app. Thank you to the Department of Consumer Affairs for introducing CSLB to this app, which allows you to take text from a publication and place it into the app on the Hemingway website to determine the grade level of the content. This will help determine publications that need to be simplified into plain language. Public Affairs is already working on simplifying the documents as it reviews publications for updates, such as when staff recently updated the What You Should Know Before Hiring a Contract brochure. And that brochure is, I'm hopeful, will be highlighted in large letters, bold, with a flashing red light of some kind or something on websites, so especially people with disabilities and seniors will be alerted as to what they should be doing. As part of this objective, Public Affairs also plans to form an internal forms and publications committee to determine which additional forms and publication need updating. The second objective is implement a CSLB phone app to increase accessibility to the board's services and consumer education, which has a target date of the second quarter of 2026. This will allow time to determine the scope of a possible app and to work with IT on the capabilities and content of an app. IT is working with DCA to determine the scope. Some ideas for content include highlighting the Find Your Licensed Contractor. This is a feature to make it easier for consumers to find a licensed contractor and understand the status of the license. This could also be useful for licensees when they're checking on their license status. The third objective is conduct outreach and build partnerships with building departments, state agencies, and industry groups to educate consumers about hiring licensed contractors and students about construction-related fields. While the outreach efforts remain ongoing, this has a target date of the fourth quarter of 2025. Public Affairs will be working with different state agencies along with educational institutions to expand outreach for students interested in construction-related fields. Public Affairs will also continue to update its outreach presentations to include hot-button topics such as solar, and to provide building departments with relevant publications as requested. Public Affairs looks to expand its partnerships with building officials and related organizations such as CALBO, which is California Building Officials, and participate in its annual business meetings next spring. In continuing its outreach efforts, Public Affairs will be working on revising the Building Officials Guide, which will also be updated on the website as a resource for officials, licensees, and consumers. The fourth objective is update CSLB website to make it more accessible and user-friendly. DCA will be assisting CSLB with making the website more approachable to the public. Public Affairs also plans to expand the availability, frequently asked questions on the website to better assist consumers and licensees. Public Affairs is also looking to establish an internal committee to review the website for additional changes. While the website updates are an ongoing effort, the objective has a target date of the first quarter of 2026. The fifth and final strategic plan objection for Public Affairs is update the CSLB logo to increase consumer awareness. Public Affairs will work to research designs for a new logo and looks to provide 3 to 4 options to the Public Affairs Committee sometime in 2025. The logo will eventually go to the full board for approval. The goal is to complete the process for a new logo by the first quarter of 2027, which includes updating publications with the new logo. Do any of the board members have any comments?
I have one comment. Thank you for the update. I am very excited about, I'm going to go on record, being involved with strategic objective 4.3. Helps that resonates with me in many, many ways, and building partnerships and helping others understand about the construction industry. So I'd love to be involved.
Thank you. Any other board member comments? Any comments from the public? Okay, if there are no comments, I will now proceed with the Public Affairs update starting on page 205. The Public Affairs Office, or PAO, is responsible for media, industry, licensee, and consumer communications, as well as outreach. They provide proactive public relations, respond to media inquiries, and develop and distribute publications and newsletters. PAO creates content for CSLB's social media channels and website, including webcasts and videos. Regarding the website, Public Affairs recently worked to update the filing a complaint page on the website with a guide informing consumers about how to put a contractor on notice if the need arises, along with a sample letter consumers can use to notify the contractor about concerns with their project. Our website also includes the Disaster Help Center with resources for consumers. CSLB is continuing to monitor wildfires around California and will be participating in upcoming local assistance centers as requested by the California's Governor's Office of Emergency Services, where staff will provide rebuilding resources to survivors. In the area of video and digital services, PAO has focused on creating informative videos for consumers, licensees, and applicants. Recent videos have included tips for hiring a licensed contractor for various home improvement projects, including a tips for hiring a tree trimmer that will be shared later. The videos are shared on YouTube and other social media platforms and archived on our CSLB website. PAO has also prioritized translating and producing Spanish licensed consumer and industry videos. You can see a list of live and recorded videos starting on page 206. Beginning on page 207, You'll see how PAO continues to increase CSLB's following on social media by improving engagement with applicants, licensees, the news media, and other stakeholders. CSLB maintains an active presence on Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter, and LinkedIn, where all platforms continue to show growth. The most popular post on Facebook was posted in June and educated consumers on how to respond to unwanted solar construction solicitations. On page 210, the PAO shows us an updated subscriber list of nearly 192,000, which includes the licensee information listserv. The subscriber list also receives CSLB's industry bulletins and press releases. Between May 1 and July 31st, CSLB issued industry bulletins related to fire, sprinkler, fitter registration requirements for fire protection contractors, licensing requirements for contractors who work on manufactured homes and mobile homes, and resources available for contractors who manage treated wood waste. PAO responded to 26 media inquiries between May and the end of July. The media coverage focused on various topics, including undercover steam results and high-profile contractor complaints. Page 211 shows the outreach events CSLB attended between May and July. You'll see that Public Affairs Office staff, along with assistance from enforcement, have been busy providing key consumer protection information to seniors and other stakeholders. CSLB also has a new outreach coordinator who started in late June and has been busy providing all events around the state. Pages 211 and 212 show a list of the publications and reports CSLB completed between May and July. They include updates to our Get Licensed to Build guide and the What You Should Know Before Hiring a Licensed Contractor brochure. The Public Affairs Office also writes and publishes content for internal communications. On page 212, you will see a list of the intranet articles PAO has between May and July, highlighting upcoming meetings, CSLB employee events, and a celebration of the accomplishments of Southern California Enforcement Academy graduates. The intranet is accessible to all CSLB employees around the state. Finally, on page 213, CSLB's Public Information Center continues to see low wait times for callers. The wait times have been under the board goal of 6 minutes for all of 2024. Since this is an informational item, no action is required by the board. Do any board members have a comment?
Public Affairs Chair Love. Yes, Michael Marker, for the next senior scam stopper seminars that are coming in this area, please let me know. I'd like to attend and make sure there's board member present. And I appreciate all board members who have attended past senior scam seminars. It's very important for the public when they see a board member who lives in that area to have the presence to be at these senior scam seminars. So thank you.
I had the pleasure of attending and presenting at one of the senior scams along with the legislators who put on the scam information. It was most informative. I believe I was in Pasadena. It was very well attended, so I would encourage that we keep doing it and attending, and more board members might want to be involved in and actually putting on a scam. I also would be interested in continuing to do that as well. With that, Chair Mark, this concludes the Public Affairs Program update, and I'll now turn it over to Chief of Public Affairs Catherine White for the next agenda item.
Do we need to ask for public comment on the previous item first?
I just did.
Okay.
Is Is there any public comment, just to make sure?
I apologize. I did ask if there any public comment. Yes, better safe than sorry. Hearing no public comments, I will now turn it over to Ms. White.
Thank you, Chair Love. First, we will show you a video that we collaborated with the National Association of State Contractor Licensing Agencies regarding disaster response. Both Registrar vote as president of NASCLA, and I, in my role as on NASCLA's marketing task force, worked on developing this video. The video from NASCLA is titled "Protect Yourself After a Disaster." The video was shown at the NASCLA conference last week, followed by a presentation from Katrina Palomar of the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services on disaster response. We want to thank Katrina for highlighting how CSLB assists with Cal OES's disaster response efforts. And then Jason, if you could please play the first video.
When it comes to rebuilding after a natural disaster, choosing the right contractor is crucial. Whether you're repairing storm or fire damage or building a new home, hiring a licensed or registered contractor ensures quality workmanship and peace of mind. But how can you be sure you're making the right choice? Only work with licensed or registered contractors. Check their credentials, ask for references, and verify their business with local authorities. You can contact your state's regulatory agency to check their license or registration status. Be cautious of door-to-door offers, out-of-state or unlicensed contractors offering to help. It may be illegal and punishable as a felony to operate without the proper license or registration in a disaster area. Obtain written estimates from multiple contractors before making a decision. Be wary of significantly low bids, as they might indicate subpar work or hidden costs. Next, check reviews and references. Research online reviews and ask for references from past clients. Honest feedback can provide insights into a contractor's reliability and quality of work. Always insist on a written contract outlining the scope of work, timelines, and costs. This document protects both parties and helps avoid misunderstandings. Confirm that the contractor obtains the necessary permits for the job that will ensure that the work complies with local building codes. Don't pay everything up front. Only pay the minimum down payment required by law and request a payment schedule from the contractor. Lastly, before final payment, ensure satisfaction with the finished work. Verify the release of any liens associated with the project. Hiring a licensed or registered contractor is not just about getting the job done. It's about protecting your investment and ensuring the safety and integrity of your home. With the right contractor by your side, you can rebuild after a natural disaster stronger than before. For additional resources, you can start by checking your state contractor licensing registration board, as well as other sources that can verify information.
Thank you, Jason, for sharing that video. And with that, we will go on to our next video. The second one is one that television specialist Amy Lawrence created that's called Tips for Hiring a Tree Trimmer. With the establishment of the C49 tree and palm classification earlier this year, we thought this video would be valuable to consumers. We consulted with West Coast arborists in developing this video and appreciated the guidance. And if Jason, if you could please play the next video.
With spring already here and summer on its way, it's a good time to start tackling your next tree trimming or tree removal project. Tree maintenance adds value to a property and can help prevent potential hazards. However, tree trimming and removal can be dangerous, so it's important that you hire a licensed C49 tree and palm or D49 tree service contractor to perform the work. Licensed contractors meet minimum work experience requirements, undergo a criminal background check, and carry insurance, bonds, and workers' compensation insurance. Unlicensed contractors don't have these protections and often request too much money up front. Here are some tips to help your project run smoothly. Before hiring anyone, get 3 bids and check references and job sites. You should ask to review past projects the contractor has completed that are similar in size and scope. You want someone you can trust to do the job right. You can check the contractor's license at CSLB.ca.gov by entering the contractor's license number or business name to make sure their license is active and to see if they have any disclosable consumer complaints. You should confirm the contractor has workers' compensation insurance for employees. In the contract, be as detailed as possible with your project expectations and make sure everything is in writing. For example, if you're having a tree removed, does the service include grinding and removing the stump? If so, it needs to be in writing. Tree removal service companies typically remove debris created by tree trimming or removal, including branches, leaves, wood chippings, and sawdust, but don't assume this is part of the service. Be sure to include who is responsible for debris removal in the contract. You may want to recycle wood from your tree to store as firewood or use in crafts. Let your contractor know ahead of time so they can cut the wood into firewood-sized lengths. Only sign the contract after you completely understand and accept the terms to make sure your expectations are met. As with all projects, don't pay more than 10% down or $1,000, whichever is less. And don't let payments get ahead of the work. It's important to include a detailed payment schedule in your written contract and follow it. And don't make the final payment until you're satisfied with the completed work. Stay organized by keeping a file of all paperwork pertaining to your project, including your payments. You may need to reference them throughout the project or after it's complete. You can find more information about hiring a tree contractor at CSLB.ca.gov.
Thank you again, Jason, for sharing the video. And of course, thank you, Amy, for your work on that video. And with that, I will turn back to Public Affairs Committee Chair Love for any board or public comment.
Thank you, Catherine and Jason. Are there any board members that have comments? Yes.
On behalf of the industry and the tree trimming and landscaping, I do appreciate staff coordinating with WCA and getting that video. It's very informative. It's great. You don't realize how many companies in that industry do not have the proper workers' compensation. And after hearing some of the stuff that we heard yesterday with the tiny homes, it could be a big issue for homeowners. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other board comments? Any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, before we go into the presentation of the last video, I believe it's a video or report, I would just like to direct this comment to the board chair that for our next agenda item that we put on there for discussion and possible vote to rebrand us as CSLB, as the Contractor State License Board. I will now move into the presentation from California Commission for Disability Access on Accessible Parking Campaign Toolkit for the Construction Industry. For the next agenda item, there will be a presentation from April Dawson-Rawlings, the Executive Director of California Commission on Disability Access regarding the Accessibility Parking Campaign Toolkit for the construction industry. CSLB worked with CCDA on this toolkit, which is now available for contractors and can be found in the packet on page 219. Also, I'd like to thank Board Member Mary Tykert for providing Tykert's Vice President and Director of Field Operations to be part of the work group that advised on the content of the toolkit. And April is at the podium to speak. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Love. Hi, everyone. I'm April Dawson-Rawlings, and I'm the Executive Director of the California Commission on Disability Access. Thank you to Chair Mark and to Registrar Fote and to all the board and staff for being here today. I'm really looking forward to talking with you about our accessible parking toolkit for the construction industry. I'll talk a little bit about the background of how it came to be and a little bit about why it's important and how it can help our licensees. I say our because we're all a team. Every stakeholder group that I go to, I always say us and an our, and talk about how we can partner together to get this out there to our licensees and to make sure that accessibility is paramount in all the construction projects that are happening in California. So most of you are probably familiar with our commission, but I'd like to share a little bit about just a high level about us for those of you who may be new to the table or who I haven't met yet. This is just a picture of a few of our commissioners and me sitting at a table at one of our commission hearings, as well as State Architect Ida Claire wearing white on the right. And our mission and values is that an accessible, barrier-free California means that there is inclusive and equal opportunities and participation for all Californians. And our mission is to promote disability access in California through dialogue and collaboration with stakeholders, including but not limited to the disability and business communities, as well as all levels of government. And CCDA was established by the California State Legislature in 2009. There was a lot of concern at that time from the business community in particular about what are now referred to as high-frequency litigants. So there's a perception in the business community that there were people who were filing multiple lawsuits against, particularly small businesses who maybe didn't have a lot of knowledge or resources on disability access. And there were issues about the fact that disability access wasn't really sort of at the forefront, maybe behind some of those actions, that it was more of a money grab, so to speak. And so a lot of reforms happened to try to prevent that. And the California Commission on Disability Access is a partnership between the disability community, local, state, and local and state government in particular, but we also have federal partners as well as several different stakeholders, the legal community, and the business community and the construction community to try to educate businesses and contractors and others to put access on the front end. So CCDA was really created to be that space of how about we talk in a place that's not a courtroom about how to increase disability access across California. So there's 17 public members of the CCDA, 11 of them. Am I screaming at you all? I'm not trying to. Sorry, I'm not trying to scream at you all. Thank you. So there's 11 public members, including a seat from the California Business Properties Association. The chair is always a representative of the disability community, and the vice chair is always a member of the business community. And there are 6 ex officio members, including legislators from both parties, the California Attorney General's office, and the state architect. So what do? We do a lot of small business education and outreach. We create technical materials and trainings, such as the toolkit I'm going to be talking to you about. We also put on regional listening forums and webinars. So we go to different regions throughout the state and we educate our stakeholders on how businesses can be accessible to people with disabilities. We also are mandated by the state legislature to do disability access litigation data tracking. So whenever an attorney or a law firm files a claim or a demand letter against a business in California for an alleged construction-related disability violation, access violation, or starting this last year, a website access violation, they report those copies to us. It's important to know that we're not involved in enforcement. We just collect those copies and then we generate the annual report to the state legislature about what are the top 10 disability access construction-related violations. So to talk a little bit about how this toolkit came about, I mentioned in the prior slide that every year we produce a top 10 list that we give to the legislature through our annual report, and all of our annual reports are available on our website if you'd like to check them out. And we noticed that parking, different types of parking construction-related violations kept coming up and trending on our list throughout California. So it was consistent across the board, across many different regions, and so it just wasn't just a one-off. And so Assemblymember Mike Fong created a bill called AB 2917, which mandated that CCDA needed to create a toolkit to educate businesses on accessible parking and exterior passive travel. So it really started off as a small business focus, and then it really branched out. There was originally one large stakeholder group that the commission convened, and then it really came about that we really needed to pay attention to the unique needs of the construction industry, and so that's why we have this toolkit as well as a small business owner toolkit. There was a lot of early engagement from the Contractor State License Board. I know that Ms. Love mentioned Mary Tykert, making sure that her Director of Field Operations was a part of this. I know Catherine and Mike, we know each other on Zoom, but we met each other for the first time today, but we've had endless conversations, and they've been great partners to get this tool out there. And just to share just some of the diversity in the group, I mentioned that Mary Tykert had given her blessing for Chris Barkley to be a part of this, but there's also some others, Robert Crisp, some people from Craig Perry from Point Sources Construction Management, and also Calbo, John James, and others from the building officials group also participated. So there was a lot of diversity of thought that went into this toolkit. Some of the toolkit highlights, and it's a copy of it is in your packet, but I just wanted to share that there's a lot about how to think about access on the front end so that you do the construction project right from the beginning, do the job right from the beginning, instead of having to go back either through a lawsuit or otherwise and realize that you have to do costly fixes to make things accessible. So there's a lot of different important highlights from Chapter 11B of the California Building Code. And it also talks about, there's a really good chapter in there talking about how you can work with certified access specialists. You may have a certified access specialist on your project team that maybe is assigned from the authority having jurisdiction or from another way that the CASP is a part of the project. So it talks about what is a CASP and how do you engage with them, and how you bring their knowledge into that project team to help be a resource for you. And as I mentioned earlier, how to plan for accessibility prior to beginning work. And a lot about maintenance and alterations of existing facilities and how that plays into things. And it's just really important because it helps in a very readable way to help contractors know when you're building, when you're working with accessible parking and building that parking or maintaining that parking, how the benefits of compliance, including reduced liability. I never like to just talk about the benefit of course, it's important to talk about the benefits of, not facing a lawsuit and things like that, because that could, shut down a business, but also just thinking about, people with disabilities as being a part of the community and wanting to access the things that you're building. And so, I'm sure you're all in this industry because you want to build things for people to use. And a lot of those people who use those things are people with disabilities. So that's what this is all about. And so I highly encourage you to take a look at our toolkit and share it with your communities of interest. I've had some early conversations with Catherine and Mike about ways that we could potentially collaborate on getting this toolkit out there. We've talked about the possibility of having a YouTube video, such as that was a good setup, like the tree trimming one. I could totally see sort of like how do you scope a parking lot, kind of video and make it fun. Also talking about the possibility of joint statements, and I welcome the board's other ideas. So in closing, I just want to thank you all for your time today. I know this was a brief presentation. Happy to come back in the future, but I'm really excited that this toolkit is out on the street and available to help the contractors that we all serve, and that we can make sure that your licensees have the tools that they need when they are embarking on a parking related project, that they make sure that they stay within the law and can make sure that what they're building is accessible to everyone in the community. So thank you for your time. I welcome any questions or any dialogue I can help provide. Thank you.
Thank you, April, for your presentation. And CSLB plans to distribute the toolkit to its licensees to help educate them on the rules when it comes to accessible parking. Do any board members have any comments or questions?
Yes, Michael Mark, I have a comment. I heard, this is out on the streets, right? This is a final, there's no, when will the next revision happen of this?
Ooh, I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to, I tend to be a little mic happy. What we're going to do is, it's out now, it's in English, it's in PDF form on our website, as well as we have hard copies, and so if you'd like some, I can make sure that Mike and Catherine, we just got them a week ago, so I'll make sure that Mike and Catherine get them. We do periodic updates to make sure that whenever there's any relevant changes to the code, that our toolkits are updated. So, this is based on the 2022 CBC, and so obviously there's rulemaking happening and things going on with like the PROEG and a lot of stuff happening, and so we will be getting together. We have a committee called the Checklist Committee. We're going to be changing the name because no one knows what that means. They're very adamant. They want to change the name. But we have a subcommittee called the Checklist Committee, and they're the ones that sort of birth all of our toolkits and create a lot of our stakeholder engagement. And so I'm going to be meeting with them soon to talk about how we can set up a schedule for reviewing these to make sure that we keep them up to date. So.
Thank you. And the reason for my comment is with this going out to the public and a lot of small business owners, you heard a lot of the stories of licensed contractors. So it would be great somewhere within here that when it's directing to our website to make sure that they're hiring licensed contractors for this work. And depending on when you do your amendments, currently anything over $500 needs to have a licensed contractor. So that'd be something, a word of advice to recommend, because a lot of small business owners aren't necessarily knowing when they're looking for parking improvements to hire the correct contractor, which will be a licensed contractor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other board comments? I do have a question, April. Does this toolkit, is it inclusive? Does it involve housing in certain areas across the whole state, or is it just strictly new construction and new structures and new buildings, or is it all inclusive?
Sorry. It focuses on accessible parking and exterior passive travel for both new and existing facilities. So, and it doesn't drill down on a lot of different types of jobs. It kind of talks about thinking about like how to set up like scoping and like curb ramps and kind of how to set up your project. So it doesn't really talk too much about housing. It does talk about it does talk a little bit about outdoor dining and refers us to, we also created another toolkit a couple years ago during COVID about outdoor dining specs, and that's kind of coming back into play as a lot of businesses really like the extra space and they want to make use of that, but how to keep the public right-of-way clear and not making sure that you're not taking away accessible parking when you are doing that, and so it kind of all ties together. So it's sort of it's nested within a larger conversations, but it doesn't necessarily talk about each one of those.
And my last question, are you working with the various chambers of commerce in various cities?
Yes, we actually, every quarter we put on a listening forum, and we're happy to do one for the construction industry specifically also. But what we do is when we go into each community, we base it on the data of the lawsuits that are trending in the, like, let's say, parking is trend. A lot of people are getting sued in Pasadena, California, for example, or something for parking. I'm just making this up for this, but then we would go to Pasadena and give our resources. And then what we do when we go to each community is we work with a lot of the local chambers of commerce, as well as local certified access specialists and the disability community, the Centers for Independent Living, and put on panels and trainings. And we've done 4 in 2024, and we're planning to do 4 more in 2025.
Thank you. And are there any public comments? Seeing none. Thank you, April, so much for
Thank you.
your presentation. Please come back and see us again.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay. And with that, I want to thank everyone for their attention for the public affairs items. There were many. My script was long. But I just want you to know that I'm very hopeful in being involved in PAO and in a lot of the implementations of a lot of the changes that we are suggesting to make it easier for consumers to be aware of how to hire a contractor, a licensed contractor, what to ask, when to ask, to do it beforehand. And I'm looking forward to working with Jason and others on the board to implement a lot of this perhaps ahead of our strategic plan dates. I think that the sooner the better. We would have less complaints. We wouldn't have to worry about not having enough staff to do a lot of things if we could just get the public involved and educate them as much as possible. So thank you for your attentiveness, and I will turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Board Member Love. Great report. We are now going to move to the last item on today's agenda, which is going to be licensing. I turn it over to Licensing Committee Chair Jim Ruane.
Thank you, Chair Mark. Good morning. It's still the morning, barely. I am Jim Ruane, the 2024-2025 Licensing Committee Chair, providing the Licensing Division update today with assistance from Licensing Chief Carol Gagnon. I'll highlight a few items for the board. Our first item is review, discussion, and possible action on 2025-2027 licensing and testing strategic plan objectives. First, the strategic plan for 2025 to 27 has been finalized. Licensing and Testing Division have followed strategic planning goals for the next 3 years. The objectives are listed on page 157 of the board packet. Objective 1.1, explore and address language barriers to licensing and testing. This objective will focus on increasing applicant, candidate, and licensee access to CSLB materials, letters, and forms in other languages, and is due at the end of the second quarter in 2027. Carol?
CSLB has already had 10 of the most often requested exams translated into Spanish. In addition, upcoming versions of these exams will have a toggle option such that the candidate can see the English language copy of the question as they're taking the Spanish exam. This will allow candidates the option to see the names of tools and materials in both languages as they take their exams. As the other forms and letters are translated, licensing will be partnering with public affairs for outreach events.
Thank you. Objective 1.2, research options for provisional licensure and pursue legislation as necessary. This objective will focus on what options CSLB has to create a provisional license to help candidates qualify for certain trades. Chair Michael Mark will appoint a committee to coordinate efforts on this project. Carol?
We anticipate having a meeting in the next 60 days to determine what the provisional license will look like, what qualifications candidates will need to meet, and which trades it will impact. In addition, CSLB will reach out to other states to assess their provisional licensure programs and gain insights into their successes. It's due at the end of the second quarter in 2027.
Thank you. Objective 1.3, develop regulations to require licensed contractors to complete continuing education pursuant to existing complaint disciplinary action or authority. This objective will also include informing licensees of voluntary continuing education opportunities. This objective has evolved into a multi-division project with enforcement and public affairs and is due at the end of the second quarter in 2025. Objective 1.4, implement online license applications and renewals to decrease processing times. This objective is a joint project with IT and will result in an online application for sole owner licenses by the end of the third quarter of 2025. And Objective 1.5, assess exam content and update as necessary to ensure exams are current with industry standards. Carol?
This has been an ongoing project on the part of the Exam Development Unit and is something they do every 5 years for each of CSLB's exams. Staff will continue outreach to the various trade associations on exam updates and are grateful for the association's input into the exams. This objective is due by the end of the first quarter in 2026.
Objective 1.6, identify and educate licensees on the need to maintain current certifications to promote proper installations. This objective focuses on determining the various certifications required for licensure in different trades and other voluntary certifications for various trades. Carol?
The goal is to create a web page for CSLB licensees to learn more about the required certifications for their trades, such as the HUD installer training for the C47 general manufactured housing contractors or the DOSH registration for C22 asbestos abatement contractors. The page will also include voluntary certification programs available to help contractors increase their knowledge and skills. Licensing and Public Affairs will partner on this objective, and it is due at the end of the third quarter in 2025.
Thank you, Carol. This concludes item 1. Any board comments, questions? Anything from the public? All right. Item number 2, licensing and testing program update. Moving on to the licensing and testing statistical update, agenda item F2, which begins on page 159. Regarding applications, the table on page 161 indicates the number of applications received for new licenses, additional classifications, replacing qualifiers, and home improvement salespersons. As you can see, CSLB received over 12,000 applications in the last quarter. On page 162, you can see all of our processing times are staying close to or under 3 weeks. Staff has kept licensing processing times at or below 3 weeks for over a year now, and are doing an excellent job at keeping up with incoming applications and renewals. The table on page 163 indicates the fiscal year totals for applications. In 2023-24, CSLB received over 49,000 applications of all types. Over 25,000 have been processed and issued, and 19,000 are still pending. Pending means that the applicant is still trying to complete the requirements for licensure or registration, such as passing the exams, securing a bond, completing the fingerprint clearance, or other factors. As seen on page 164, CSLB received over 31,000 renewal applications in the last quarter. 11,000 were received in July alone, the largest number received in the past year. Fingerprinting criminal background unit statistics are listed on page 167. In calendar year 2023, over 39,000 Department of Justice records were received, and of those, a little over 5,600 had relevant information to report. 10 applicants were denied licensure, and 185 probational licenses were issued as a result. Page 169 indicates the work of CSLB's Judgments Unit. In July 2024, 85 licenses were notified of outstanding liabilities. 83 licenses were notified of final judgments, and 155 licenses were notified of payment claim for bond companies. Once staff received completed paperwork from the courts, bond companies, FTB, or other agencies, they send a letter to the license holder informing them that they need to comply, or their license will be suspended. The suspend line on the table is the number of licenses suspended that month, and the reinstate line is the number of licenses that paid their liability, judgment, or claim and had their licenses moved back to clear active status. I'll now ask Licensing Chief Carol Gagnon to give the testing update, which starts on page 171. Carol?
Thank you, Jim. The table on page 171 indicates that between August of 2023 and July of 2024, PSI exams administered a little more than 52,000 exams for CSLB candidates. In March of 2024, CSLB hit record numbers with over 4,800 of CSLB's exams being scheduled at a PSI test center. Currently, there are no backlogs in test administration. As mentioned on page 172, CSLB expanded administration of the Law and Business exam to 20 additional test centers in April 2024. As you can see, 19 candidates have already taken advantage of the opportunity to test closer to home rather than having to fly to California to take their Law and Business exam. As indicated on page 173, the Exam Development Unit released 5 new exams between May and the end of July 2024. A new exam is one that has been completely revised from the ground up with a new occupational analysis, item writing, updated references, and a new pass point. And this happens for every exam every 5 years on average. The table on page 174 indicates that in the last year between August of 2023 and July of 2024, over 7,000 Spanish translated exams have been taken by CSLB candidates. I will now ask Licensing Committee Chair Jim Ruane to report on the annual summary of the applicant survey, which starts on page 177.
Any questions to the board on our second item? Anything from the public?
I have a question, but it may not
Yes.
fall under this item. But in one of the videos that was shown, it talked about licensed contractors and registered contractors. For those that may be listening, and we're trying to make sure that the consumers hire licensed contractors, could you give an example of what a registered contractor would be?
Yes, Member Love, I believe you're referring to the NASCLA-created video. There are many states that do not license contractors. They have a registration process. An example would be the state of Washington, and there's no minimum requirement to obtain a registration. So that may be one concern with the video. That video was intended to be used nationally by any state, and they can rebrand it if they decide, if they would like to do so. But a registration is different than a license, and that a registration is just a fee that you pay. You don't have to meet any minimum requirement. And it's, in many cases, a lot easier to take the registration away.
So that doesn't apply to us here in California?
No, well, the only registration we have is for the home improvement salesperson, but that the video is more specific to the contractor having a registration, and that would only pertain to another state, not California.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Anything from the public? Okay, move to our final, number 3, applicant survey results. The annual applicant survey results start on page 177. CSLB has sent this survey to recently licensed contractors each month since February 2020. In April 2024, CSLB began sending a Spanish language version of the survey to licensees who had taken the Spanish translated exams. For this annual report, the results of both surveys were combined. As you can see, the responses are mostly positive, with 88% indicating that the license process was easy to understand and 85% indicating that the time frame was acceptable. In addition, 91% reported that they were treated courteously by CSLB's representatives. Any comments from the board or questions? Anything from the public in the room? No other questions or comments? This concludes the Licensing and Testing Division update.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that report. So going kind of backwards a little bit, Public Affairs Chair Love did ask for some direction on the NASCLA video. Hearing from what Register folk just stated, if Public Affairs can edit said video to make it CSLB specific, I believe that's fine, and does not require a board action, but we just need to make sure that the video has been edited correctly to fit the needs of California, and then we could then utilize that specific video and put it on our webpage of our logo. So I don't think that requires board direction, just make sure we're doing so. And then seeing anything else, seeing lastly, again, this concludes our board business today. We're going to close with a 10-second moment of silence for past board member Joe Tavoloni. And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So we're going to have a moment of silence. Can we all please rise? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.